Good evening. This is Nancy, my beautiful, emotionally exhausted people. Welcome back to the Nightly Nancy News Show podcast, the only late night style show where we laugh, heal, unpack trauma, and occasionally realize our childhood explains way too much. All right. Well, I'm Nancy, and it's good to see you guys tonight. And tonight we're discussing one of society's favorite games. Pretending generational trauma is just the way your family is. Well, you'll never notice what will explain absolutely the same behavior of the weather. Oh, that's just your uncle. No, that man actually threatened a waitress because the breadsticks were cold. That's not a personality trait. That is unresolved emotional damage wearing cowboy boots. Okay? And every family has one person who finally starts asking questions. The cycle breaker asks questions. The person says things like this. Hey, maybe screaming at children isn't healthy. And suddenly everybody acts at you like you started a freaking fire. Families really do know where honesty is like, it's not a problem. Do this thing where honesty becomes a problem instead of the behavior that is the problem. You can serve 20 years of manipulation, guilt trips, emotional neglects, passive aggression, silent treatment, and chaos. But the moment you say, hey, this hurt me, you become dramatic. Am I right? If you've experienced this, let me know in the comments on what you think, if it's right or if it's wrong, if it's conditioning, if they're hiding something, if they're keeping something a secret, if you're the scapegoat, if you're the golden child, all that stuff. Basically, the drama triangle all in one wrap package that we're going to talk about what families keep secrets. It's interesting, right? So, because the same people called you dramatic once, through a casserole dish during Thanksgiving because someone bought Pepsi instead of Coke or apple pie instead of pumpkin pie. But okay, you're the unstable one. Crazy, right? People are so stupid. They think that this stuff is not going to be, noticed, but a lot of people do notice it. Just saying. Okay. Just saying. Yeah. Okay, so I think a lot of people don't realize that generational trauma isn't always obvious, though. Sometimes it's not physical abuse. Sometimes it's emotional survival tactics passed down like family recipes. Things like never talking about your feelings, believing rest equals laziness. Okay, what? Thinking love has to be earned. That's a huge one, right? Apologizing for existing, being alive. Feeling guilty for setting boundaries. Mistaking anxiety for productivity. Come on now. Some of us grew up in homes where peace felt suspicious. If the house got quiet, your nervous system was like, oh no, oh my God, something terrible is about to happen. Ah! So now you're an adult who panics when life is calm and used to the chaos, which sucks. You ever met somebody who cannot relax? Maybe. Like they sit down for 5 minutes and suddenly start reorganizing batteries. That's not ambition. That's survival mode with a planner, okay? And healing is weird because nobody prepared you for how uncomfortable peace feels at first. When chaos raised you, stability feels fake. A healthy relationship feels suspicious. For example, a calm conversation feels boring, and then a person respecting your boundaries feels illegal. You're sitting there waiting waiting for manipulation. Like, okay, but what's the catch? When is this person going to screw me over? When is the point where I can't trust this person? And you know what? Sometimes there is no catch. What? Okay, but really, sometimes there's no catch. Sometimes people are just emotionally healthy, which honestly can be terrifying, but awesome at the same time once you get used to past the uncomfortable stage, because it does go away. Because now you actually have to unlearn things. That's how you do it to be comfortable with it. You can't blame survival mode forever and can't live in survival mode forever, which is what you're doing. At some point, healing becomes responsibility. And at that part, well, that part is hard. I think one of the saddest parts of generational trauma is that normal pain becomes people get so used to dysfunction, like they stop recognizing it. You'll hear somebody describe their childhood, and halfway through it, you're like, that was emotional warfare, like World War III. And they're like, no, 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 no. We were a very close family. Were you close, or were there simply no boundaries? Because there is a difference, a huge difference. Some families can confuse also control, with love. Some confuse criticism with guidance, and some confuse fear with respect. And then kids grow up believing love is supposed to hurt. It doesn't hurt, honey. No, 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 no. That's why healing matters, because untreated pain spreads. Hurt people can accidentally raise hurt people. Not because they're evil, sometimes because nobody ever taught them another way. And I know the realization creates complicated feelings, because two things can be true at once. Someone can love you and still damage you. Someone can try their best and still hurt you. Understanding your parents, though, is not the same thing as excusing everything that they've done. And that's a big lesson. A lot of adults are walking around carrying guilt because they think empathy means accepting mistreatment. Well, it does not. You can understand why someone became who they are and still decide their behaviors are unhealthy for you. That is growth. Okay, so let's talk about boundaries. The word that makes toxic people suddenly become philosophers. The second you set a boundary, everybody turns into like a motivational speaker. You need to learn forgiveness. You're holding grudges. Family is everything. Interesting timing, because nobody mentioned family unity when you were getting disrespected, did they? Funny how boundaries expose people. Think about that. Emotionally healthy people hear boundaries and go, okay, thank you for telling me. Manipulative people hear boundaries, though, and go, so you hate me? And that is how you know, stuff like that. Boundary is not a punishment. It's communication. It's healthy. And it's saying, this behavior hurts me and I'm no longer participating in it. And yes, people may get angry when you change, especially if they benefited or used from the old version of you. That's real. It's real stuff. And some people loved your lack of boundaries. They loved access to your energy, your time, your emotional labor, your constant self-sacrifice and selflessness. And the moment you start protecting your peace, suddenly you're different. Suddenly you're selfish. Suddenly you're this, suddenly you're that. Well, correct. That's the point. Healing changes people. It's supposed to. All right, y'all. So I also think healing gets romanticized online. People post little quotes like, healing looks good on you. Okay. Sometimes healing looks like crying in your car because you finally realized your childhood was not so normal. Sometimes healing looks like losing relationships. Sometimes it looks like grieving people who are still alive, right? Nobody talks enough about that. Nobody talks enough about the grief of realizing you may never get the apology, the grief of accepting some people cannot meet you emotionally, the grief of becoming emotionally healthier than the people who raised you. Imagine that, right? It's kind of complicated, but it's real. People that have been through it know what I'm talking about. That feeling is, though, complicated. Because part of you still wants comfort, from people who only know, those people that are toxic, that in your family that only know how to survive. And survival is not the same thing as emotional connection. Some people survive so hard, like us, even now, that we forgot or they forgot how to be vulnerable. So now they joke instead of apologizing. They avoid instead of communicating, and they criticize instead of comforting. And unfortunately, if you grow up around that long enough, it starts to feel normal. You get conditioned until one day your body says, no more. You know why? Because you're not like them. You can't live that life like they can. Thank God. That's usually where the healing begins. Thank God we're not like that. Whew. So it's usually where the healing begins, not with motivation, but with exhaustion. That's the sad part. Unfortunately. But I do want to say this. Healing is possible. It's slow, it's messy, it's embarrassing sometimes, but it is possible. You can learn emotional regulation. You can build healthy relationships. You can stop. I'm sorry, my lips sick. See you there. You can stop apologizing and taking up space. Excuse me. You can learn rest without guilt. You can become the safe person you needed growing up. And honestly, you want to know what? That's powerful. Powerful as heck. Because generational trauma ends when somebody finally decides, hey, this pain will not keep traveling through people. That matters to me. Even if your family will never understand it, even if nobody claps for it, even if healing feels lonely for a while, even if you can't help someone else in a huge, huge, huge way afterwards, maybe a little ways, anyway, any way you do it and change it, it still matters. And you are not weak for trying to grow. You are the strongest person on the planet, honestly, to me. You are not selfish for protecting your peace and your boundaries and setting boundaries. And you are not failing just because healing takes time. And just because sometimes it's embarrassing. Some wounds were built over freaking decades. Give yourself grace while you rebuild. Seriously. Before we wrap up here are a few real ways to start breaking patterns from childhood and toxic environments, okay? So, number one, first, we're going to notice the pattern without judging yourself. Do not judge yourself when you notice the pattern. Self-awareness, okay? A lot of us repeat what is familiar to us growing up, not what is healthy. So when you catch yourself over apologizing, saying, oh, I'm sorry. Nope. Shutting down, avoidance. People pleasing. Oh, I can do this for you. I've got you when really no self-sacrifice there. Just focus on you. You got to go get your kid at the doctor's office, He's waiting on you or at school. Or, trying to control everything. Find yourself in a relationship where you're controlling what the other person does and you don't even realize it, that they can't swallow like that or they can't talk because you're getting annoyed. Do not call yourself broken, though. Call it a pattern. Second thing is, number two, pause. Think about it and pause before reacting. That's the way you change it, starting here. Even a 5-second pause can change everything. Take a breath, unclench your jaw, and ask yourself, am I responding to this moment or am I reacting to an old wound? Ooh. Thinking. We're thinking. Third, number three, name what you actually need. What you actually need. Not what other people expect. Not what keeps the peace. What do you need right now? Almost think of it as being a little selfish, but you're not really, by the way. But being a little selfish, right? Space, rest. Do you need reassurance? Do you need a boundary to set? Do you need a boundary? Honesty. Do you need honesty? Start there. Number 4, practice one small boundary. You do not have to rebuild your life in one day. Start with one sentence like, I'm not available for that. I need time to think about that. That does not work for me though. Small boundaries teach your nervous system that you are allowed to protect yourself. So it teaches your nervous systems and the nerves in your brain, neurotransmitters to rewire into the right way so that you are healthy again. And it teaches them that you're allowed to protect yourself and not feel bad about it. Number 5, replace survival habits with healthier ones. If you learn to stay quiet, to stay safe, practice speaking up in low risk moments. If you learn to disappear, practice taking up space. That's fun. Think of it as being selfish, not a bad thing, but you're really not being selfish at all. If you learn to handle everything alone, practice asking for help. Now we got 6. Get support, but that feels safe. Okay. That can be a therapist, a support group, or even a journal where you tell yourself the truth without censoring yourself. Healing is easier when you have support and you're not doing it alone. Support systems, I learned, are everything. And finally, number 7, be patient with yourself. And I'm also going to add compassionate with yourself. Compassionate. But be patient with yourself. You are not going to undo tons of years of conditioning in 1 breakthrough, 2 breakthrough, 3 breakthrough, 10 breakthrough, 20 maybe. It's got to be a habit. Real change happens in repetition, in tiny choices, in catching yourself and choosing differently again and again. That is how cycles break. And how long does it take a habit to be formed? I think like 30 days maybe, but it's got to be repetition. Okay, that's how you change a cycle. That is how families change. That is how you become the person you needed to be when you were younger, the person you want to be, and the person that you don't want to be. You know what I mean? And the person that you weren't able to be when you were a kid. So, all right. My emotionally aware night owls. That's tonight's episode of Nightly Nancy News Show podcast. Drink some water, hydrate yourself, take a deep breath, and let it out through your mouth, and let your stomach puff out. Text your therapist or don't. Journal maybe, or maybe just sit quietly for 5 minutes without doom scrolling for once. That alone would heal half of the freaking population. Okay, I'm Nancy. And this has been the Nightly Nancy News podcast, and I will see you guys later. Nancy out. Bye.